Francis Scott Key seen them niggas shooting those guns and drove them crazy. That's why he wrote that third verse. All right, right behind me is Fort Henry. Fort Henry is a site that the Star-Spangled Banner, which is American national anthem, was written off the site. But before we talk about this, I didn't know I was going to do this today. I decided just to shoot some video. But before we talk about the history of it, let's do a flashback. When this happened at the war of 1812, about 30 years ago, British got their butt whooped by some country white folks over here in America. And you know, just like if a person get their butt whooped, they go practice that get back. And in my opinion, the British was doing their get back now. They just went down to Washington, D.C., burned down the Capitol. That was the first time the Capitol got sieged. The second time the Capitol got sieged was this year in January. But the British just went down there to the Capitol, burned it down and everything else. And the British made their way up here to Baltimore. They had a whole bunch of ships, right? Hold on, I don't want to see, can you see the ships? You can't see the ships, but that. All right, from here, the British had 50 huge ships right here, 10 miles out from the fort. But those ships was too big to come very close because they was huge and the channel wasn't that deep. So from those 50 ships, they sent off the smaller ships that came within 2 miles of Fort Henry. This information came from a historian that was on site right here. That's the water over there. All right. They had a whole bunch of ships in that water right over there. And the person who wrote the Star-Spangled Banner, one of his friends was on that ship. Now, the person who wrote it was a famous lawyer from D.C. He was pro-slavery. Only thing he did in D.C. was fight to keep the slaves enslaved, because he had a lot of them. And back then, all your wealth, American wealth, was all in slaves. The land wasn't worth nothing because the land is worthless unless you got somebody to work the land. So one of his friends was on these boats captured by the British. So he went down there and said, hey, I want to negotiate freeing my friend out of here. And during that day, the British started to unload on Fort Henry behind me. Bombs after bombs after cannonballs after explosions. They was trying to knock that flag down. You can't see it, but okay, you maybe can see it. They trying to knock that flag down. And during that time, the person who wrote the Star-Spangled Banner, he seen all this from the eyes of the British. He seen those guys trying to take down this fort. He also seen they had some black people working for the British. Now, the historian schooled me on some new things. He said at this time, 1/3 of the crew members was black. Also, he said at this time, Baltimore was the 3rd largest city in America with 50,000 people, and 10,000 of those people was black, and they all worked at the shipyard. Many was free, but they were skilled craftsmen building ships. If you're not familiar with this, DC back during this time, they had skill-free black craftsmen in DC building ships too. So that is some history. And when Francis Scott Key, the guy who wrote the Star-Spangled Banner, when he probably seen all those niggas manning those guns and shooting on us over here, that probably drove him crazy. That's all. That's my opinion. That's all I got to say. So maybe that's inspired him to write that second verse, which talks about some black folks. But imagine if I was here during this time, standing on the side, I would be a slave. So who I'll be fighting for? Will I be fighting for my freedom, or I'll be fighting for the freedom of the country? That's why the American history is so complex, and we still dealing with the same issues today that we had back then.
Is that cannonball? While they've been doing that, that cannonball has been over there in a furnace, an oven like you have in your kitchen. And That is so hot, it's red. I mean, it's really, really hot. Cherry red. I call it hot shot. Put that in. These two guys push that cannonball up against these rags. You know, this is gunpowder. The rags are the only thing keeping them from the cannon going off and saying goodbye to those two guys there. So you have gunpowder, the rags, hot cannonball. Now you put some more rags in on top of the gunball to keep the ball falling out. So it's all packed in. Now you're ready. Everybody grabs a line here. Now you can see the lines here. So 5 men here, 5 men there, and they pull back on this, and this moves 12,000 pounds up against the wall. Now they're going to aim the cannon. So by using this thumb, when I fire those reproduction guns, we use the same manual they used back then. And this is how they aim it, right out of the manual. Because he's got a lot of experience. He knows everything there is to know about cannon. And if I need to move the cannon up and move it down, they have hand spikes. And this is a big hand spike. Another one over there, and I push down on this, and this will lift the breech up. We all have breeches. And I use this coin to move it forward or backward, and this will give me the elevation I need. And if I need to move the gun, the whole gun, that way just a little bit, they put these underneath the carriage and jump the gun. There's no such thing as workman's comp. Now they're ready to fire it. So here's the fun part. I'm telling everybody to get out of the way. And there's a guy back here, and he has this pick. Now this is iron, so it doesn't make any sparks. Takes this, puts that down that hole, and what that does is punches a hole in the powder bag, exposing it. And then he has a little paper tube, like a little paper tube, like you wrap pennies up in. Put some gunpowder down in there. The gun capping. That's me. Okay, it's ready to go. Clear! Everybody gets away from the gun. He takes this. If I was to light this, this would be really, really, really hot. Fire! Touch that. The whole cannon goes off. It jumps back from there to here. It jumps back to that path. So you don't want to be behind it. And that ball, what they want that ball to do is skip across the water, like taking a stone and skipping across the pond. And all that takes 2 minutes. Now, my job is, the gun captain is back here. Because I'm smart. I read a lot. I work out before. Something happens to one of those guys, I always get another guy. That's why I'm the captain. If you read books, I've read, since I was your age, I read 1 book a week, and I still do. And that's why I'm the captain. How's that?